Okay, embryology and embryological development. There are two cells that come together to form an organism. These in sexual reproduction, it's called the sperm and the egg. Here is a diagram of a sperm. The acrosome and the flagella. The flagella or the tail moves it. The acrosome secretes enzymes that help the sperm get inside of the egg so that it can fertilize it. It's not always the first sperm that gets there because sometimes it takes a couple of sperm to weaken the outer shell enough so that the second or third sperm is the one that actually fertilizes the egg. Here is a slide of human sperm. You can actually see the cell body with the little tail. Now you have the ovum. This is an egg. Now the egg is much larger than the sperm, and you get all your cell organelles and things from the egg. Here's the cytoplasm. You got the nucleus. And when the sperm gets in there and fertilizes this, you get a zygote. The zygote goes through a few cleavages. Goes into 2 cells, 4 cells, etc. Eventually, it will form this ball of cells called a morula. Okay? The morula will then start forming a little cavity called a blastocele. Here's an early blastula. At that point, once it gets a cavity in there, it is a blastula. Now, an early one versus a late one, this would be much larger. It's got a bigger blastocele. And here's a diagram. From blastula, it's going to go to what is called the gastrula. The gastrula develops this blastopore. Okay? And here is, at this point, we're no longer talking stem cells. Once we get ectoderm and endoderm and eventually mesoderm, we will no longer be stem cells. So it's only up through the blastula phase. So here is a gastrula. Now the gastrula, here is the blastopore. Now there are deuterostomes and protostomes, right? The protostomes, this will be the mouth. In deuterostomes, that will be the anus. And it will start moving a little canal through here called the archeneron, and eventually that will come to the other side in humans, and that's the beginning of your GI tract. Blastocele will become the body cavity or coelom. Here is a more advanced gastrula, and you can actually see the archeneron has started to move in. The late gastrula, at this point, we'll pick up some mesoderm, and the late gastrula, these will start becoming accessory organs to the GI tract as it moves through. I would like to talk a little bit about fetal development, the terms, and trimesters, simply because these are used almost every day in various political arguments. And so I think it's a good idea to understand what these mean, because I think a lot of people don't. Scientists developed terminology to study this, and so we had to come up with ways and names for stages that basically in the human formation. And for some reason, one stage has become very controversial, the fetal stage. Now, when you first get fertilized, up to about 5 days, you're still considered a zygote. Then from 5 to 10 days, you're a blastocyst. From 2 to 7 weeks, you are an embryo. Once that embryo gets 8 weeks old, it becomes a fetus. It will be a fetus until it undergoes parturition or birth. Now, a lot of people get upset when you say fetus because, no, it's a baby. No, it's not a word that describes value or morals or anything else. When somebody says fetus, all they're saying is it is still in the uterus and it is between 8 to 37 weeks old. It's not saying that it has less value. It's not saying that it has more value. It's not saying any of that. That was just somebody who didn't take the time to learn the scientific words for the process. So if somebody says, yes, a fetus is this, and then everybody, oh, no, it's a baby. Well, I understand how you feel about that, but understand if it's a scientist talking, he's not implying that a fetus has less value than you do, okay? Generally speaking, it's generally accepted that if you're born 24 weeks, which would be like 13 weeks early, you've got a pretty good chance of survival. There have been increasing number of cases because of science developing good medical technology. We can now, if you are born at 22 or 23 weeks, you have a pretty good chance of surviving. But there's also a possibility you may have some health side effects as children and adults. The big issue in a lot of this is when your lungs start producing a surfactant, which allows the surface tension of the fluid in the lungs to be broken so that you can breathe on your own. And in very premature babies, they spray an artificial surfactant in there. And unfortunately, it's not quite as good as natural surfactant. And in some kids, there are side effects where it will cause some damage to the lung tissue because they spray this stuff in. But, there's no other option. To be honest, you have to use it or you will not survive. And that ties in to most of the abortion laws up until recently. Basically, you couldn't get an abortion past a time that medically you would have a chance of possibly surviving. Okay? Trimesters. First trimester, 1 to 12 weeks. Second trimester, 13 to 27 weeks. Third trimester, 28 to 42 weeks. In all, third trimester abortions are in a minute fraction of abortions. There's very few of those, and they're only for extremely rare cases. And from what I have read, the majority of third trimester abortions, unfortunately, the fetus is already expired, has passed. And the woman is carrying a fetus that is not alive. It's not going to survive even after it's born, so they will abort that pregnancy. I can't imagine the psychological damage caused by being forced to carry a fetus that you knew was already passed away inside of you. So there's that. Second trimester, still a small percentage. By far, the majority of abortions are in that first trimester. Whether it be the morning after pill or, it's usually just a prescription. Not saying that abortions are good or bad. I'm just trying to give you some actual scientific facts about the process. Because science has put these terms together not to enrage people or get them upset. It has just put them in there to help us study and understand the process. And without things like these stages, we wouldn't have moved the ability to keep premature babies alive sooner and sooner. Okay? We have to basically identify and define stages of life. And the purpose of that stages of life is so that we can then study those stages and develop techniques to increase likelihood of survival in those stages. So next time somebody gets upset when they say fetus, you might remind them, hey, it's not saying that a fetus has less value than a born human, someone who's undergone birth. It's just saying that it is between 8 and 37 weeks old and it's still in the uterus. Okay? So that's all I've got for the embryological development.